Adidas went with a whole new look on the Trey Young 3 this year, but at $140, are they really worth it? Let's take a look.
Now the switch. Trey gets rid of it. Kevin drives it. Back to Trey for the bomb. Good. Let's go 1-by-1. Screen for Collins. Trey going up. Got
it. Welcome back to our channel, guys. And man, we got a fun one. I love testing out these signature lines. Today we got Trey's third shoe, the Adidas Trey Young 3. Retails for $140 like I just touched on, but we're going to be putting it through the ringer, testing out how they do for traction, how the cushion feels, how comfy are they, you know, the support, the materials, basically all that stuff. We weigh them for you. Got some fun stuff coming up. Before we break these down though, of course, I just like to always kind of give you an overview on basically what this model has going on. So like I said, we're up to 3 models, and I actually got to hit these early. The Currys and the LeBrons, I didn't get to play in a lot of those early lines. I was a little too young, didn't really know what was going on, but now I can. I've actually gotten to play in all 3. I got the 1s down here, the 2s right up on top of that. First thing is, like, they have finally made some, I don't want to say finally, but they did make some changes again to the Trey Young 3. Honestly, he's got one of those lines where the 1s look different from the 2s, look different from the 3s. A lot of times in basketball shoe lines, people get lazy, in my opinion, or whatever. They just don't want to take the time to design it, and they'll just kind of keep them similar. But they did switch some stuff up. I like that. I like the different kind of look they have going on to the midsole this year. You can already tell you got a funky traction pattern going on. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but they switched up the design, somewhat of a different the build is similar, but what they did, like with the actual shoe, is different. Last year they had a sock like fit around the ankle. They went away from that a little bit this year, kind of switched it up. But I mean, the appearance on these is just so funky. The bottom looks like they got mumps. I think that's weird. I kind of like how they reversed did the Adidas logo at the bottom of the toe lacing. And actually, before I even move on to the performance, because we're about to get to that, so bear with us. But I mean, as far as the design goes, I was like, what does this remind me of? I was looking at the midsole, I was like, what does that remind me of? None other than a slide that I own. Miguel actually brought it up. He's like, this looks just like the Out-of-Light slide that Adidas dropped. The ones that they got pushed back on from Kanye West, but it does have a very similar like midsole design. That kind of looks in right now. So they're just trying to go hype on Trey's shoes, maybe for the design, get more interest. Worked for me. And Trey Young's kind of like a really well-known person in the NBA, so he gets a lot of like that reputation on his own. So now let's go ahead and get to what you guys most likely came here for and start talking about just the actual breakdown of the shoe. So the first thing I like to talk about is the comfort, and this is a spot where they probably fell off a little bit. Like the Trey Young ones, they came out, they've been using some sort of combination of light strike and boost basically across all 3 shoes. It seems like what they like to do is put the light strike in the front half, get more of like that boost feel on the back half of the shoe. We actually use our durometer reading, and like before we would like test out the front and the back half of the shoe because those numbers would like kind of vary. But the 37, that's the reading we got from more of the back portion of the shoe, and that was showing up a little bit lower on some other numbers. And the durometer reading just kind of measures how firm or soft it is. You can kind of tell based off this scale that we give you. So, I mean, not going to be, it doesn't, what do I want to say? I want to say that like the durometer reading doesn't always directly translate to the cushion and how it's going to play. But this time it gives you a pretty good idea. Like the cushion's okay. It's not going to be as comfortable as it has been on some of his other models. But the problem is, that's actually a perfect segue, because where his other models, it hasn't been the comfort that's kind of been lacking on the Trey Young and the Trey Young 1 and the 2s. It's more so been the support, which is basically the highlight of the Trey Young 3. So it is nice to see that over the last 2 shoes, they maybe were doing some things to kind of pick at it and try, because the Trey Young 1 had some heel slippage, and the Trey Young 2, it was like the exact same amount of heel slippage. It didn't feel like it got much better. Didn't feel like it got much worse. It was just kind of the same exact heel slippage going on. I wasn't a huge fan of that. No one is, because then your foot's sliding out. With the Trey Young 3, they did some things to fix that. Huge fan. The first thing you're going to notice that jumps out to you is these pink little lace loops. So the lacing system itself kind of runs within this barrier, but down the side, if you kind of offset it, kind of extend it down, it just helps your foot get wrapped over the actual over the footbed better. You won't be doing any sliding left or right. That's for the lateral containment. And if you notice, I was talking about heel slippage on the Trey Young 1 and the 2s. I wish they didn't have his first and last name in the shoe line. Trey Young 1. Trey, could have been the Trey 1. Either way. So as long as like whenever it comes to support, it was like always the heel slip coming out. That was the problem. Now they put like this final lacing loop. I swear to you, if you lace it up to here, you're done for. You're done for. But if you lace it all the way to the back, that final one, it just locks it in and you don't feel that heel slippage. That's a super key element because shoes that don't have good support, they're tough to be serviceable. Like I tend to be pretty picky. I play in all these shoes so I can break them all down. There's certain shoes that people are playing in that I just would choose not to play in because there are better options in my opinion. This one is giving me one of those spots where the cushion's okay, but the support definitely starts to make up some of that ground. And one thing I do want to touch on real quick is just the weight of the shoes because they actually weighed in at 464 grams for a size 10.5. That's what size I always buy, so that's how we measure that out. Size 10.5, 464 grams. Ironically, that's the same exact weight as the Luka 2s that we just did, the previous shoe that I reviewed, but it's actually going to be slightly lighter than the Trey Young 2, a little bit heavier than the Trey Young 1, but 464 grams, that's like a perfect number that I can't do anything with. It's not light to call it light. It's not 500 grams to call it heavy. It's not a super, super low top shoe, but it leans more that way. You'd like to see it lighter. It's not super concerning, but at the same time, as long as the support feels nice, this upper, and it's actually been consistent across all three models. The upper material that they're using, especially in the toe box, is almost like, feels like a water bottle, you know, like you can move it, but at the same time, it feels like it's going to get back to its natural shape. It's not just like super, super reactive to your movements. I'd say like the LeBron 20, they could have probably done a better job with that in that section because it felt like support was maybe one of the things that lacked. But I was happy to see, you know, at the end of it all that leaving out the weight, the support was a spot that this was a definite plus. That leads us to the traction, and the traction was like honestly making a good push last year. The Trey Young 2, they were pretty squeaky, you know, had a little bit of bite on the court after the Trey Young 1s were kind of like a swing and miss. That outsole didn't play the greatest, but for the Trey Young 3, they did not do themselves any favors. They didn't do themselves any favors with whatever this pattern is. Like I said, they're actually different levels of height. These bumps are different levels to the ground. Only some of them touch. There has to be a reason for that. I think I know what it is. To make you have less grip. That's not what the reason is, but that's what it feels like because the Trey Young 2, it doesn't have the same bite as last year. Also doesn't have the same squeak as last year. We did our squeak test. Wasn't really giving us anything. If I'm going to be honest, support and not support. Leave that. Don't leave that out, but leave that out for now. Cushion and traction are two of like my focal points. If it's comfortable for me to play in and it's got grip, I can ball for hours. You know, maybe you can't do a certain one of those step backs if it's, you know, got a little bit of heel slip, but no shoes that bad where you're wearing sandals. Some of them are just worse than others for that quick first step. But for me, I really, really, really grill in on that cushion and on that traction. That happens to be the weakest points on the Trey Young 3. So for my official letter grade, whenever we factor all of everything else in that we've talked about, the Trey Young 3 is going to end up at a C. And I'd say, you know, the Trey Young 2 was probably a C+. The Trey Young 1 was maybe a B- to a C+. Like, his line's been pretty good, but it's been pretty average. It hasn't been great. There's been great elements within it. The cushion from time to time. The support on this year's model, honestly, really solid, but it hasn't like hit all three once, and it really hasn't hit two of the three that well on any of these shoes. So that's something that I've just kind of been noticing on Trey Young's line. He did have a budget-friendly line come out that's super comfortable, and the grip is crazy. The heel slippage on that shoe is worse than any shoe I've played in. I'm not gonna lie. So I don't know what it is, because I like Trey Young a lot. Just for some reason, the support, like the heel lockdown, seems like they've been having trouble with that. So whenever I factor all that in, that's what ends up putting them at a C. But as far as the sizing, before I let you go, I mean, it's going to be a standard fit. That is one thing I like. The length, you got about half a thumb's width left over. As far as like the width goes, it's going to be wider than the 2. So something I like, so you don't got to worry about, you know, the sizing hugging you. So true to size, that's probably what I'd recommend. But you know, that's actually going to wrap up our review on the Trey Young 3. We're going to wrap it up with a C, either way, whichever way that plays on camera. But if you guys like this review, if anything, we just thank you guys for sticking by to watch. Feel free to throw us a sub, and if you want to buy these shoes, more importantly, they're still a C. They're not too bad. $140. Are they worth it? They're not much more worth it. They're definitely right around it, but I mean, still a solid shoe to play in, especially whenever you factor in the support. The cushion, It's definitely playable, not the best part of the model, but overall, still seems like a great model. Or great model, it's a stretch. It still seems like a good shoe to hoop in. So if you want to buy it and you're interested, we will leave a link for you right here on the screen, or you can just check it out down below or in our bio. That's going to wrap up our breakdown on the Adidas Trey Young 3. Let us know down in the comments what shoe you guys want to see next. Can't wait to do another one with you. Till next time. Peace.